Welcome to Property Focus. I'm your host, Peter Ngigi, and in today's episode, we've got a good one lined up for you. We aggregated frequently, commonly asked questions so that we can demystify for you some of these things that are bothering you in the real estate sector. Now, if you're a first-time homeowner or you're just perusing the property space, this episode is for you. Let's get into those 24 questions. So, what are the initial steps one should take before purchasing property in Kenya? Number one, you want to make sure that you have a history of that developer. What projects have these developers put out before? You want to go investigate these particular sites, have a look at them, see what the paint is like, see what the gate is like, have testimonials, talk to the people who own units in this particular development, find out what their feel is on this particular property. Are they enjoying it? Are they looking at selling because they have problems? Maybe the plumbing isn't too good, wall sconces are falling, electrical issues. You want to find out what their previous job is like, because you're only as good as your last job. So that's the very first thing you need to do. Number two, go to the site and look at the site board, because that is going to inform you on who the consortium is. I'm talking about the architect and the engineers. You also want to make sure that they are working with a qualified team. If it's worth you investing, it's worth you investigating. Have a look, see if they're experienced, so that you know that they can complete this particular project. Now, in a city where we've had occurrences where projects have actually collapsed, it's very important and pivotal for you to just investigate a bit further to ensure that you get a good project. Now, number three, and I cannot emphasize this enough, the importance of this is get a conveyancing lawyer, a seasoned conveyancing lawyer for your particular apartment that you want to purchase, because they would guide you on the sale agreement. Don't just agree to taking a unit because a developer has told you they'll shave off maybe 1 million or 1.5 million off. No. Have a lawyer, and it's very important you always do. Have a lawyer structure your sale agreement so that you are able to be at peace whenever you're purchasing this particular property. Another thing that I want to add to this, and many developers won't like me for saying this, but I have to tell you. Now, milestone payments will be your saving grace when you're buying off-plan properties. I'll tell you why. And what that means is, milestone payments is that you want to pay as per milestone of the developer. So when you sign your sale agreement, you put down 20%. Let's say it's a 10 million apartment. So you put down 20%, that's 2 million. Say this unit is on the 8th floor. When you get to the 8th floor, then you pay another 10%. When you get to the roof of the entire structure, then you pay another 10%. When you have all your conduits and all your gypsum and all your lighting, everything done, kitchen hard finishes, then you pay another 10 or 20%. And once the completion certificate is out, you have another 6 months over there of room to just make the final payment so that you can own the property. If you go that route, it sort of mitigates you from any risk exposure. So those would be the very first 3 points before you purchase any property, especially if it's off plan. How do I determine the market value of a property? One, that's easy. You just need to go to your neighbors and just find out what did they pay for that particular unit. Talk to the property managers or the caretakers of the neighboring properties or the surrounding properties. Find out what they paid for those units, which will give you a good indicative of what it is that you're being charged for the unit that you want to purchase. But if this unit is already built, just get a valuer. And if you're really worried about getting a reasonable valuer, you could go to your bank. They have a panel of them. If the bank is going to be giving you a mortgage, they could actually refer you to an appropriate valuer for that particular property. Usually for a unit that's about 100 square meters, it will be anywhere between 20 or 50,000. If it's 200 square meters or 300 square meters, could be anywhere from 50 to 70,000. 300 square meters going up could be anywhere from 100,000 going up. So roughly that would be the cost implication that you would be paying. And it's good to pay that upfront, so you know that you're actually getting the right intrinsic value for the property you're purchasing. What are the legal documents required for property purchase in Kenya? As an individual, all you need is your KRA PIN and your ID card. If you're an entity, all you need is your CR12 form, which is the latest one, and a couple of other documents that the bank would require if you're going to be taking a mortgage for that. So they'll be looking at your bank statements, but those are not the legal requirements. The legal ones would be your CR12 and your ID cards for the directors of the company. Now, if you want to buy property and the entity has foreign shareholding, you might want to accept the fact that you cannot get any freehold property. You can only get leasehold property at 99 years because of foreign shareholding, and I do believe it's prohibited for foreigners to own agricultural land in Kenya. And the only time you can own agricultural land with a foreign shareholder is when you've got a presidential pardon. I believe so. So that's about that for question number 3. Now, question number 4, what are the common pitfalls to avoid when buying property? Again, I have mentioned this. Ensure that you always get a lawyer whenever you're purchasing property. Don't chase the good deal. Don't chase the good deal. Don't chase the discount at the expense of not getting a lawyer. Always get a lawyer. Number 2 is what a good friend of mine called National Core usually says: don't buy into the sizzle. There's the sizzle of advertising that is usually done. Oh, you hear 95% of the units have been sold, only 2 units remaining, so they pressure you to purchasing property only to find out maybe 70% of it hasn't been sold. So don't buy into the sizzle. Do your due diligence. Always be cautious. And if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. They usually say businesses here in Africa, or developers at times, you find they go under something called VUCA. They're volatile, they are uncertain, they are complex, and they're ambiguous. So you need to always make sure in Africa you're always doing your proper due diligence. Number 5, what are the best locations for real estate investment in Kenya right now? This is very subjective, and usually at times budget informs this. So, some people will prefer other areas, some people will have budgets for other areas. But what I will say, ensure that you've got, the bare minimum, tarmac all the way to the road, to your property, with some exceptions. I remember there was one time we were selling to a particular client who wanted tarmac, but getting into their property, they wanted maram, and the reason for that is because of their horses' hooves. So some people may not prefer tarmac all the way right till their doorstep because they have horses, but how many clients are like that? How many people are buying properties with horses? So ensure you have tarmac, ensure that you have amenities, you're close to certain areas. Here in Nairobi, Junction Mall, TRM, Village Market, Sarit Center, there are certain places that have different conveniences for you to just have a better quality of living. We go to number 6. How can I tell if a property is a good investment? Well, I would use the rule of 72. If you're going to buy a property, let's say that's about 10 million, you'd want to find out what is the annualized income that you get from that particular property. So what I mean is, if this property is 10 million and you get rent of about 80,000, so you do 80 times 12, the 12 months in a year, which will give you 960. That 960 divided by the total value of the property, which is 10 million, times 100 would give you 9.6. Now, that 9.6, take 72 divided by 9.6, that would give you the amount of time it would take you to double back your investment. If you're going to do a 10 million shilling apartment that's giving you 80,000, it's going to give you 7.5 years on return on investment to double back your money. So that's that. What role does a real estate agent play in the buying process? Now, you want to talk to a real estate agent because of the knowledge. They know the areas, they know the developers, they know what's coming up, they know different locations, and most of all, you need to trust one who's been registered by the Estate Agents Registration Board. It's very important that you have one who's registered, who understands what it is that they're doing, where they have their license on the line, if there's anything dodgy that happens. So ensure that you're always dealing with a registered agent, and it's very easy to just find out. Just ask them for the Estate Agents Registration number and cross-check that against the website. Are there specific regulations for foreigners buying property in Kenya? Now, we had mentioned this before. If they're buying agricultural property, it's not possible. And if at all they're buying property here in Kenya, they must have local shareholding. And also, if they do, or when they do have local shareholding, they may not be able to buy freehold property. They can only get leasehold property. Leasehold meaning not more than 99 years. Freehold meaning 999 years. Now, the only exception that they could get is if they get a presidential pardon. So that's for that. What are the differences in buying residential versus commercial property? Really, commercial property would be far much more capital intensive to put up, because you need to be in certain busy roads where there's a lot of traffic, footfall traffic, car traffic as well. So it's a bigger venture to get into as opposed to residential. Okay, question number 10. How can I assess the potential for appreciation in property value? Now, a couple of things usually determine this. You can find, let's say, a corporate or institution is going to be moving their HQ to a certain place. So, for example, Safaricom could be moving to a certain area. They could be relocating their HQ to a certain area. That area that they're relocating to, speculatively, the price would go up because there's an anticipation that these employees would be moving over there. Therefore, they'll be able to command better rental income. So the property value just sort of goes up. Number 2, population density. Population density will be another informant of just property appreciation value. Why do I say this? Because the more densely populated a place is, the higher the price per acre. For example, we all know Muthaiga to be the most prime location or the most expensive location in terms of property. So you could find property, an acre of property going for about, give or take, 220 million, 250 million. But as acre of property in a densely populated place such as Kilimani or Parklands would be able to fetch far much more than an acre in Muthaiga. So whereas you're getting 220 million in Muthaiga, you could be getting 350 or 400 million in a place like Kilimani or Parklands because of the population density and many people just coming to that particular place. Lastly would be infrastructure. You could have a mall that is setting up, you could have a road, an expressway that is setting up. If you just look at the expressway that just came up recently, all the properties along that line, and many developers are actually scrambling to go to the outlets of these expressways because of the convenience that infrastructure is able to give. So that's just about that, and your property appreciation value would increase from those particular factors. And welcome back to Property Focus. Now we're still looking at the 24 questions in frequently common asked questions here on Property Focus. Now we're looking at financing and mortgage questions, and question number 11 is, what type of mortgages are available in Kenya? So there are two. You've got your KMRC mortgage, which is Kenya Mortgage and Refinance Company. I'll get to that in a bit, which is 9.5%. And you've got the market rate mortgage, which is usually at market rate. This could be vary by 1 or 2.1.2 between different banks, from 20 to 21% or 18 to 21%. Now, let's go with the 9.5%, the affordable mortgages provided by KMRC. This is for first-time homeowners who have a salary not more than 150,000, and it's a very good opportunity for anybody to own a property. So those are the two primary mortgages in the market, and they're offered by a couple of banks. There are about 53 banks in Kenya, 5 banks being tier 1 banks, and you have your tier 2 banks and your tier 3 banks. There are some that are listed with KMRC, so check them out. Now, question number 12, which banks offer the best mortgage rates and terms? I want to be objective and just offer the best advice. Make sure the bank that you're taking a mortgage with is fixed. What do I mean by fixed? If you're paying 50,000 fixed throughout your mortgage tenor. It is fixed throughout. So year 1 it is 50,000, year 10 it is 50,000, year 25 it will be 50,000. Let's just say you're taking a mortgage for a 10 million shilling apartment, 105%, it will be 91% thereabout, and what you're paying in year 1 is the same all through your mortgage tenor. All right, good. Let's go to question number 13. What factors should I consider when choosing a mortgage provider? You want to work with a bank that you've been banking your money with over time, and a bank that understands you and has a relationship with you, that is able to just pull out your history, because that is your relationship with that bank. The way you've been depositing money and withdrawing money, that is an interaction between you and that bank. That is a relationship that you have with that bank. So I would suggest that particular bank that you bank with would be your best bet to take a mortgage facility or financing from. Okay, so question number 14, how much of a down payment is typically required? Now, more often than not, you'd find that some banks would require you to have some skin in the game. So they'd want you to put about 10% to 20% in your mortgage. So, whereas also some banks would just give you 105% financing, meaning you'll just pay, let's say, 1% to your lawyer, which would be like something like 90 or 100,000 for them to just carry out the due diligence. And they cater for everything being the closing costs and the money for that particular apartment. So those would be the situations with different banks. So you'll find some will charge you 10, 20, some would pay the whole thing. So what are the steps for getting pre-approved for a mortgage in Kenya? So there are 5 C's that are usually in finance, and whenever you're taking a mortgage that a bank usually looks at. So the first C would be your character. They want to understand who are you as an individual, your financial standing. So this is the time where you need to pay all your Fuliza, all your Mshwari. You should ensure that you have a very good standing with CRB so that you're able to just have good financial character when you're taking a mortgage. So the very first thing the bank will assess is your character as an individual. The second thing that the bank is going to look at is your collateral. The collateral is going to be the security that you're going to be putting forward for that particular mortgage. Now, in more cases than not, it's going to be the property that you're going to be purchasing. So that will be the security in the event that you're not able to pay, that the bank will be taking. Right? So let's go to the third C, which would be your cash flow. What is your cash flow like? Now, in as much as the bank wants to make money from lending you money, they don't want you to be stressed. They don't want you to be head high in terms of waist deep in terms of your debt. They want to ensure that you're sort of free and you're able to pay for this mortgage freely without any stress, right? So they look at your debt ratio, and what that will constitute of is any time your monthly payments are being paid, what is usually left? Are you the kind of person who your salary comes in 2 weeks you're on zero, or when your salary comes in at the end of the month, when your next cycle comes in, you still have some money left? Now, if you still have some money left, that's a good situation. And if you haven't started that already, this is a very good practice for you to have. Now, the other thing you want to be looking at is your capital. Now, the capital that you will be putting towards the development that you're going to be purchasing. So this could be with the developer that you could place the money with, or with the bank. 10%, 20%, and it's a very important culture to any young person who's watching this to just save, always save. Just have something that's always going into a custody account that you can just save to put towards a mortgage whenever you're purchasing a property. So that capital is the other C. And last but not least, we have the capacity. Do you have the capacity to pay? And how they usually check on this is, are you working for a big institution? Usually people who work for government, people who work for multinational corporations, and generally companies that have over 50 to 2,000 employees. These would be considered companies that are safe to extend mortgages to, because that person's contract could last for some time. So those would be the 5 C's in essence. Question number 16. How does the interest rate in Kenya compare to other countries? I'd say it compares very well, especially if you're buying a first-time property. 9.5 is quite good. We have countries whereby interest rates are at 40%, and in the first world countries, you have interest rates which are at 3%. So we're not too badly off. At 9.5 to 20%, we're kind of in the middle right over there. And we go to number 17. What financial documents are usually needed for a mortgage application? Now, what you need over here is your M-Pesa statements for the past 12 months. The bank sort of uses regressional analysis to just come up with your finances and to understand you financially. So M-Pesa statements would be key, and your bank statements would be key for the last 12 months. So those will be the bank statements or the financial documents that will be needed by the bank to qualify for a mortgage. On to the next question. What happens if I default on my mortgage in Kenya? The bank will really try work with you to ensure that you don't default. But if you must, or if you totally just cannot absolutely pay for the property, the bank will take the security which they held. Remember the other C that I was talking about, collateral, which is the security. That's what they would take so that they can recover their money that they loaned you. Good. Are there government incentives for first-time homeowners? Yes, they are. With KMRC, you can, or a bank that is listed with KMRC. So just Google that. Google the listed banks that are working with KMRC. So as a first-time homeowner, so you could purchase a property, right? Question number 20, how can I improve my chances of getting mortgage approved? It's an African culture. We're all told to do this by our parents. We encourage a culture of saving. Always save. Save whatever it is that you get, put it aside, put it in a custody account. A custody account is an account whereby you actually have to go to the bank branch to actually access this money. So don't make it too convenient for you to get this money with mobile banking or your ATM card. Put that money aside in a savings account, and you would be able to, you'll thank yourself later. Because if you're buying a 10 million shilling apartment, and let's just say through your 20s all the way till your 30s, you've saved about 5 million bob. That 5 million bob, you could put it towards a 10 million shilling apartment. Now, if you get a mortgage for that particular property with capital investment deposit of about 5 million bob, you would have to pay about 40,000 every month. Now, if this particular apartment has a tenant who is paying 80,000, you would have earned yourself another 40,000 every month for this particular property. So always ensure that you're saving your money. Don't spend all your money. Always ensure that you have some loose change every time when it gets to your next cycle of payment, so that the bank can know that indeed you can actually qualify for a mortgage. Now, we're going to get into another set of questions, which is property development and renovation. And a couple of you had some questions, especially where contractors are concerned. And we have a question here from one of you. Can you recommend reliable installers for marble and granite? We've had them on the show. There are about 3 of them. And depending on what it is that you would like, you know, if you're looking at marble works, I would suggest Elegant Fittings. If you're looking at stoneworks, I would suggest definitely Stone Arts. If you're looking at stone flooring and walling, I think Classic Molding would be a good bet. But you know, it just really depends on what it is that you want. I believe all these 3 would be able to just accomplish that for you. They will be reliable enough, and you can look at some of our episodes to just get to see some of their work. Now we go to question number 22, and we had somebody who asked, what are the common features that add value to a property? So again, still going back to what we talked about, we've got marble in your kitchen countertop. If it's marble, you know, that's something that sort of adds value for your particular property. Your wall sconces, you want to ensure that they're in PU, a very high grade of polyurethane. Your flooring, your skirting, you want to ensure that this property has high quality skirting on the floor that is not cheap and damages over time. So those sort of things would be able to help you come month a far much better rental yield when you take care of them. So, you know, even in your kitchen, instead of getting MDF, get plywood. We've done an episode with Bina, and you know, you have your lower cabinetry interacting a lot with water. So if you have your lower cabinetry in plywood, it's much better material, it's more robust, it deals better with water. So that's a far much better material to use. The best practices for hiring a contractor. And I think that's going to be our last question for today. Now, you want to ensure that the contractor is NCA certified, and you could easily just check their number on the site. And also another good thing, depending on the job that they're going to be doing, NCA 1 to NCA 8 is how they're classified. Are they going to be doing a major construction for you, or are they going to be doing a residential property for you? These are things that you would be able to just extrapolate based on their certification. Well, thank you for keeping it property focused. Those were the 24 questions that had been troubling some of you, and we thought we would demystify them a bit further. Now, if you have more questions or more topics that you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us on that number, reach out to us on Property Focus, hit us up on the comment section. Remember to like the video, and remember, keep it focused and keep your investments wise. This has been Property Focus. My name is Peter Ngigi.